Thank you, everyone. Now we're going to hear more developing a life cycle assessment, or LCA, of an automated sorting and pre-processing facility and its ecosystem with Akhil Shivanandan, co-founder of Green Story, and Dr. Sarah Key, senior research analyst at RAP.
I'm here from RAP. I'm a senior analyst in our textiles team, and I'm here with Akhil, who will introduce himself a little bit more in a moment. So here we're going to talk to you about a project that we're working on as part of ACT UK. So I'm going to give you an introduction to our work on the full circular textiles ecosystem, and we're approaching this in a really holistic way, looking at the social, the environmental, and the economic perspective. And then Akhil will go into more of the LCA that we're doing and the approach that we're taking to that and the novelty that we've found. So this project really aims to build on all of the other amazing work that you've heard about today. So as I mentioned, to look at the kind of social, environmental and economic case to build overall a really strong, hopefully, business case for moving to this circular system. And we'd like to thank all of our work package partners that we've been working really closely with on this work. So these stats, I'm sure, won't be a surprise, but we know that the UK textiles industry has a huge carbon footprint, it has a huge water footprint, and less than 1% is being recycled back into textile products for use in the industry. We also know that the textiles industry in the UK is using a huge amount of virgin materials, and 0.7 million tonnes of post-consumer textiles are ending up in residual waste. And as Christina mentioned, about 500,000 of that is NRTs. So at RAP, we have a lovely footprint tool that we've used to scenario model what the demand for recycled fibres might be and should be in the future. So if we look at how much of each of these recycled fibres are being used currently, it's really very low. You might not even be able to see it. Carrying on business as usual, what this could look like in 2030 is again not really huge at the moment. But if we look at what we need to do to meet climate targets, such as those in Textiles 2030, we need to see a huge increase in fibre-to-fibre recycled fibres and the use of these in textiles. So you've heard a lot today about the circular textiles ecosystem, and this is how we're thinking of it. So we're really taking both ends of the value chain and bringing them together so that the materials are flowing around and being used for as long as possible. And we really need each of these parts of the circle to be working and to have a kind of viable business case, because without any one of these links, the circle will not work and it will be a broken system. So to do this, we've been looking at not only the impacts of the ATSPs and sorting itself, but also the upstream and downstream impacts, as well as any wider impacts in the UK, but also internationally, so that we're making sure we're addressing any unintended consequences too. So as I mentioned, we are looking at the social impacts, the economic impacts, and the environmental impacts. And it's really the environmental impacts that we're here today to talk to you about through a life cycle assessment. So the life cycle assessment that the Green Story team have been working on is really quite novel. So it's not just looking at one product or one aspect of the system. It's really looking at the full system, which is really exciting. And we're also looking at not just the impact of the ATSPs themselves, but also where the displacement will occur for the virgin resource use. So we can see some really key, exciting opportunities for the UK sector. We've heard a lot from lots of experts here today, but really we do have an opportunity to be leaders in the use of recycled fibres in the UK and to overcome some of the challenges that we've heard about today, which is really exciting. We can see that upscaling fibre-to-fibre recycling in the UK can really increase opportunities for the UK spinning and manufacturing industry, kind of minimising these transport impacts and keeping it all kind of in a consecutive system. And we can see that this LCA that we're going to be presenting today can feed into the business case for bringing investments into the UK. So I'll hand over to Akil to tell you a bit more about the LCA.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sarah. So it's been a pleasure to work with the RAP team on this very unique lifecycle assessment. Just to give a quick introduction for what Green Story does, we are a platform with a service provider which basically enables lifecycle assessment at scale for brands and for manufacturers and with systems as well. We also support in decarbonization pathways. Our USP is in the textile space, where what we really excel in is really deep diving on every aspect of this, breaking down the information and looking at the nitty-gritties. Because as we are doing all of these LCAs, as you will see when the results are released, the most minor things can have a huge impact when you really dig into that. And we really believe, when it comes to setting up the LCAs, you need to really look into each and every aspect. This is still a very new field, if you think about it. The very first textile PhD for LCA was in 2008. We kind of know because he works with us. So, and within that, we also look at having very deep textile expertise. I'm a bit of a desk jockey myself, but like a lot of the people who are working at the RAP project have actually gone to the facilities, really know things back to back. And of course, we also support in going beyond the LCA and transforming companies, as well as with our regional partners to support in regional business models. So at the core, we are a data company. We talked about the knowledge that we have. It comes from 8 years of work that we've done in the textile space, as well as the team that we've built around. Our Chief Sustainability Officer, who's also the lead for the RAP project, has written over 170 books on the subject of textile LCA and over 200 plus published scientific articles. And the whole idea for us is really starting from good data, not assumptions, and really deep knowledge on everything that's being done. And it's very interesting how the space is developing. A lot of the work that we have done that we are going to present is actually built on the back of work that we've done previously as well. The RAP team, of course, brings a lot of knowledge into this, and that's been great for us to work with a partner like that. But we also brought a lot of prior knowledge and models from circular business models that we've analyzed for companies globally, including ThreadUp, Zalando, Rent the Runway, and this one over here is a Mexican company, which is one of the first of its kind in Mexico. So the overall process that we follow for most LCAs, and this one is no exception, is a step-by-step to actually define the goal and scope. This was a little bit easier with the RAP project. It was already well defined and set up. But what we worked on was to really go to a granular level and kind of define what this should be. We then worked to build out the process flow and build. You saw a lot of presentations today which are going about like how the textile supply chains works, how systems can kind of feed back onto itself. So we need to look at that from a scientific perspective and kind of look at how the material flows actually work within the system. And from that, from an LCA perspective, you do a LCI, which is inventory. Like for each step on the way, what is the list of materials that are there, both useful and useless, which can be carbon in this case. Then we check the data. We work with either external specialists, our own review team, or with our partners to kind of make sure that the data is correct, the assumptions are correct, and also have a look at our databases to kind of see how the system is being set up, and then do the final inventory modeling and the results. So where we are right now in this project is the modeling is actually kind of complete. I think we've had the first preliminary results presented yesterday. So we're almost there, 2 more weeks. I wish this conference was just 2 weeks delayed so we'd be able to present the full results. Unfortunately, we can't right now. But what's been great is through all of these stages, we've been able to sit down with RAP to review and check the data, and this actually also ensures alignment with the ACT UK work that's going on from a broader perspective. So the first thing that we should look at here as a novelty as well as the system boundaries. System boundaries is basically the different steps that are analyzed when you're looking at an LCA. If you're looking at the carbon footprint of a system or a water footprint, you need to look at what are the points that you're going to analyze. So this is a bit simplified, but overall there were two kind of basic systems that were analyzed. One is if for an ATSP facility, what is the impact just from having that one system? And then what happens when you scale it up across the UK, and kind of what is the impact from a systemic level? So you're starting with the NRTs, you're looking at the different collection systems that are there. When we looked at it, we saw residual and curbside were not having too much of an impact into ATSP. Most of it was coming from commercial recycling, and the rest of the systems were actually going to more landfill and incineration. So that's the kind of assumption that we took when we were doing this modeling. And from the ATSP or the conversion and sorting facility, so the conversion and sorting facility is like the as-is system. It's like what would happen, what's happening right now. Well, ATSP is more like the future, the to-be system. So either which way, it either went into open loop recycling into 4 types, or closed loop into 4 types, which is the 4 types of fabrics that we were looking at. And from these fibers, we went into yarning with a mixture of virgin inputs kind of coming in from that. This is the actual process map, by the way. So as I said, it was simplified, but this is what it really looks like. It's just one of them. There are 4 that were done on this, so it does get a bit more complicated than this when you do the actual modeling. As I said, we like to go really in-depth with the granular structure and base. So what we've done here is looked into our database and broken it apart as well. I always think of LCAs as a bunch of minor LCAs masquerading as a giant LCA, and that's kind of what this is. So this project is really interesting because it's very atypical of what we do, because we are really focused on scale. This is more of like an in-depth research system, and there's a lot of novelty that's gone into this and new methodologies that has been developed as a result of that. So basically, if you're looking at something that's impacting not just a singular product, you're not getting the life cycle assessment of this single product. You're looking at it from a scenario and a systemic perspective where basically, for example, you're taking the recycled polyester component from being 0.1% of the UK landscape to, say, 100% as a scenario, right? So what would the impact then be on the UK footprint? And 3 new modeling systems were put in place to do this. One is the ATSP itself, so the operations of that, understanding how sorting and processing and the mechanisms will work within the ATSP. The second is displacement. So when you're introducing so much recycled materials into the system, how much is actually getting displaced in terms of virgin impact, right? In terms of virgin fibers, and what's the impact that's coming out from that? And of course, there's fiber-to-fiber recycling as against typical conventional disposal options. What is the impact that comes from that? So when we look at this, the biggest challenge that our team felt was the data itself. There's no real secondary data sets for all of this. This is all new research. So we therefore had to use a lot of our secondary research, and a lot of the data that we did also came from what we'd call our proprietary data sets, which, to demystify it, we went to a bunch of factories and facilities, went there in person and asked them how they do this, what's the impact, how they're collecting this. And we've been doing this all over the world, and we had to kind of take all of that data and localize it for the UK landscape as well. So these were the scenarios that we considered. So initially, when the project was put out, there was like 2 scenarios, the as-is and the futuristic, more to-be scenarios, which includes household residual waste. And now where the system's going is basically 6 scenarios, which includes for each of these scenarios the impact of displacing virgin fibers with recycled fibers for cotton, polyester, and man-made cellulosic fibers. which is viscous, right? I think we are adding a few more now after the last meeting, so it might be 8 at this point. The idea with all of this is to give more granularity on planning. So, what would happen if 100% cotton recycling is achieved, right? So each kind of these scenarios have different impacts on like an economic scale, a feasibility system as well, and this fits into the broader scenario planning that ACT is doing and RAP is doing right now. Let's talk a little bit about the data itself, and I think this is quite important to see because this is going to be a huge challenge even moving forward, right? And there are basically 3 things that come in. One is the incompleteness of data. For example, open loop recycling, there wasn't really any data available out there. Then understanding based on the data that's available, what is the data that is must-have and nice-to-have. The nice-to-have stuff, you can make assumptions or even skip sometimes if needed based on time and like actual feasibility. And of course, setting up a preliminary LCI view so that all stakeholders can actually see what's the data collected, and based off that, give inputs and adjust the final LCA. So to fill in this gap, we used a bunch of different information. So, for open loop recycling, for example, as I said, we went out to the factories. We even for the bale covers, the PET straps and all of this data wasn't available in secondary data sets. We had to rely on actually our facility partners, send some boots on the ground and collect this data ourselves. So this is more of a technical thing, but I think the implications from an LCA perspective is really interesting, because once the methodology is set up, and it is now, and the systems and data are in place, it allows for a lot of implications in future LCA modeling. One is the cross-functional aspect of all of this. It's all this granularity in modeling that's been done with all the scenarios means that if somebody wants to do for other circular business models and systems, which includes ATSPs, these can be used for those systems. And it's a great tool for planning. I got 2 minutes left, so I'm just going to run through this. There is the idea of being of like a more holistic system that's been used. So you're looking everything from cradle to grave here. The full impact has been modeled. And of course, there's the flexibility that's within all of this. Because we've modeled everything at a granular level, you can add different feedstocks and see how different fiber compositions can change this impact. Sorry, how do I go back? Yeah. So this is the last slide I guess I'll leave you with. What I loved about all of this was what I'd call a consortium model. You had basically 3 actors working with this. You had the industry, you had ACT and RAP, and you had Green Story kind of working together to actually scale up this kind of impact development. This is something that we are now deploying at scale across the world. We're doing this at a national level in India with the Prime Minister's advisory bodies. We're doing this at state levels there. We are exploring this in Pakistan and Southeast Asia and China. The idea is being able to get a lot of retailers and manufacturers together and being able to do LCAs, digital product passports, systemic analysis at scale with a government sponsor. I think Impact Plus spoke earlier. This is something that we're actually launching with them as well right now. So this, rather than the traditional model of a company needs to do digital product passports or LCA, this kind of system allows for problem solving at scale. I think this is something I'd really like to see repeated more often. So if you have questions on this, please do come by. Thank you.